Project Binky in colour. Starring Nick Blackhurst. Also starring Richard Brunning. And Rex Hamilton as Abraham Lincoln.
Tonight's episode, a trip up to Boot Hill. Coming up in episode 8, I forget to leave a gap. Hang on. Pause. Nick name checks Posey, Pootle and Perkin.
I know, 3 flumps.
And we both consider editorial content. Can I use the phrase cock in a sock? Since the last time, we've stripped back the doors, removed the fantastically complicated mechanisms, and given it a coat of undercoat. Oh, and we've cut a speaker hole too. Next job on the list is to repair and reskin the doors. This is the last bit of rot on the car, so it's going to be fantastic to finally get rid of it all.
I reckon we're about halfway to getting this door on the car, so I'd best get on with it.
Yes, you better had. The first thing to do is remove the rotten old door skin. 2 spot welds attach the top of the skin to the window frame, so those have to be drilled out first. There's also a sneaky spot weld under the door handle, so that has to get drilled out. Where the skin meets the top of the main door shell, it's folded over and welded, so that needs to be sliced off next. Once those welds are broken, the rest of the door skin is simply folded over the main door shell, so with some patient and careful work with the grinder, Nick can split the skin from the door frame. Look closely and you can see a gap appearing between the frame and the skin as the seam is ground down. The bottom of the door is rotten away, so there's only the seam down either side to remove. Now with a bit of luck, the frame should come away from the skin in one go. Lovely. That didn't need more than one take. Honest. So there we have one de-skinned mini door. The rot at the bottom is pretty bad, so it's time to get this thing repaired.
Ordinarily, you probably wouldn't bother with a door this rotten, but in this case the skin had to come off anyway to finish the modifications, so it's not that much more work to fix it. Plus, of course, I'm keen to keep the car as original as possible.
We've wire brushed all the paint off so we can see exactly which bits need patching and which bits are okay, and it's obvious that there's a bit around the door hinge mounting that needs some attention. After cutting out the affected patch, it's clear that the actual hinge mount is fine, so we'll just protect it with some weld-through primer, make a new plate, and weld it on. Sorted. To rebuild the corner of the door, we've clamped in the new skin to give us something to build to, and cut a piece of steel the right size and shape. We're left with this once it's welded in and linished back. And we've done the same on the other corner. The very last bit of rot on the Mini is the bottom of the door, and this is going to be replaced with this repair panel. But before the new panel goes in, we've got to cut out the rusted, rotten old steel. Woohoo! Of course, the brand new repair panel doesn't fit properly, so after some modification, welding and linishing, this is the finished repaired door. This length of 25 by 50 by 3mm box section is going to be the side impact protection bar. The bar is going to fit this side of the glass between the top front door hinge on the reinforcement panel and just below the door catch where we're going to extend the spreader plate with this little fella. There he is, all welded in and everything. We've clamped it into place and added a couple of 2mm spacers to give us clearance between the door skin and sound deadening and the side impact protection bar. So after tacking it in first, then welding the bar in properly, the side impact protection bar is now in place. It picks up on the 2 strongest parts of the door, the hinge reinforcing panel and the extended door catch plate.
The next problem we've got to sort is with the wiring loom we need for the electricals we've put in the door. The problem is the only place to bring it in is here on the hinge panel, which is on the outside face of the glass, and all of the electricals of course are on the inside face of the glass. So I've made up a load of these little fellas, which I'm going to have to weld to the inside frame of the door to keep the wiring loom out of the way of everything that moves.
Welding a load of these tabs in will make it easy to tie wrap the wiring loom neatly out of the way of the window and regulator mechanism. This is the hole where the loom now comes into the door. Et voila! The completed frame with cable runs for the new loom.
The last job on the door shell is to put drain holes back in the bottom.
This has to be the easiest mod on the whole thing. Drill a couple of holes from the outside and then lightly countersink them from the inside to allow the water to drain out. A shame British Leyland didn't think of that. Yay, it's new door skin time!
There's a couple of things to do to the new door skin before it can go on. The first of which is to fit a spreader plate and a couple of captive nuts for the mirror.
Well, that was easy. Right, next job is to etch prime around the edges of the inside of the new panel before fitting the sound deadening, because of course we can't get to it once it's fitted to the frame.
Just in case you were wondering, I have been doing the other door as I've been going along. So we've now got 2 non-rusty door shells, 2 old skins waiting to go in the skip, and 2 new skins waiting to go on. You can make your own jokes up, I'll give you a minute. I'm not saying anything. It's time to finish this door by putting the new skin on. It's not difficult, but it does require a bit of patience. First job is to drop the 2 bits together in the right place.
To line the skin up properly, we have to make sure that the hole in the outer panel for the handle lines up with the corresponding hole in the frame, and to keep it there, we'll just stick a bolt through it. Once we're happy that the skin is properly lined up and in the right place, we can clamp the whole thing together using nylon clamps and bits of cardboard to make sure there's no damage to the new panel.
Now all I've got to do is fold the edges over. There's 2 ways to do it. You can either use a hammer or a door skin tool. I've got both, so I'm going to use them.
Nick does love getting hammered, so he'll start by bending the return over to about halfway using his favourite hitting stick, before turning to the special tool to finish the job off. You have to take this steady and make 3 or 4 runs through, getting tighter every time. And once you've gone all the way round, you end up with a nice tight fit on the door frame and a severe case of a dead arm. And this is the bit where you turn it over and pray like mad it's okay on the other side. Perfect. Don't know what we were worrying about, to be honest. Not a ripple in sight. That's not a bad job at all. Pretty happy with that.
Ordinarily, I'd now go round the edge with a hammer and dolly just to tighten it up and then weld the skin to the frame here and here. But as it is at the moment with a little bit of adjustment, I'm going to leave that until I'm happy with the panel fit. So for now, that's 1 door down, 1 to go.
And through the magic of post-production, here's the finished near side door. And here's both of them resplendent in their new skins. All we've got to do now is bolt the hinges on and hang the buggers on the car. Hold on, those hinges look awful.
Indeed. I think they're all past it. Now the quick simple solution would have just been to change the entire lot for a decent set of second-hand ones. So that's what I did.
The law of averages means there had to be at least one point during the build where common sense prevailed. So all that's left to finish the doors off is to screw the new hinges on and then hang them on the car. Job's a good one. No, wait a minute. There's another thing. We've got to obsess for weeks about the panel fit. Yeah, that's what we'll do next.
Not bad. It needs to come down a bit and go back a bit.
Judging these panel gaps by eye is fine, but you can take the guesswork out of it with a bunch of these window and door shims from your local builder's merchant.
He's picked out a suitable shim to check the gaps all around the door. And I don't think it's looking too bad. I mean, you could go mad with them if you wanted to.
As a last check, I need to put the A panel on where it needs to be.
Again, that doesn't look too bad at all. He's got to be happy with that.
There's something funky going on with the gap here. It's not terrible, and I might live with it. Then again, I might come back later and just run a bead of weld down it to close the gap up.
There we go. The door is hung and the panel gap is about as good as a Mini gets without getting all Nick Blackhurst about it. He isn't going to sleep until that one little gap is fixed, though. It'll pick at him like a really sharp, picky thing.
It's been a bit of a slog. We finally got a pair of decent doors on the car. Like most decent doors, they operate fully in both the open and closed positions. And that's great. And it means we can finally have a think about the front end panel work.
Woohoo!
Only I can't think about the front end panel work because there's something else that's been bugging me for weeks I need to sort first.
Oh, God, it's the boot lid, isn't it?
It is the boot lid.
Told you so.
Or more specifically, it's the fact that if you bought a car with central locking, you'd fully expect that central locking to work on the doors and the boot. And on this car, it doesn't. And that's annoying.
The reason why few people do this is that the lock mechanism and barrel is inside the handle itself, and the handle is just a simple rotating latch.
The neatest method of getting central locking on this boot lid, we take the catch out and drill a hole through it, just this side of the locking tab, and then use an actuator to put a locking pin through it and stop that tab coming back. The trouble with that is, there's not really enough room behind it. My second thought is to do the same thing, but from the front of the catch mechanism. But then you end up with a massive electrics on top of the boot lid, and I don't want that. Oh well, here we go again then.
Yep, it's thinking time once again. And there's nothing like a nice cup of tea to get the old synapses firing. And a biscuit. Mustn't forget the biscuits. Today's choice is dark chocolate digestives. Hello, he's had a thought. I can tell by the constipated look on his face. I always worry when he has a thought and I'm not there. What the deuce is he up to? Oh right, yeah, of course, he's linishing a biscuit. Why wouldn't he be? Now he's marking out the biscuit, obviously. Okay, so he's drilling a McVitie's dark chocolate digestive biscuit. He's lost it, hasn't he? Yep, putting a bolt in it is entirely reasonable. This really does take the biscuit. Sorry.
What I've come up with then is this little lot. I'd love to show you how I got there, but I've eaten the prototype, so an explanation will have to suffice. What we've got then is a metal bracket with some captive nuts on it, piece of threaded tube with a hole up the middle for some adjustment, screws in there like that, a locking nut. I've substituted chocolatey goodness for some steel, and then a locking nut on the back. And the whole thing bolts up into a bracket that I've already welded to the car.
So here's the assembly bolted into place and not a crumb in sight, thankfully. And here's the new catch that'll accept the new locking mechanism.
And the last piece is a central locking actuator that I've screwed to a bracket that bolts through two holes already in the parcel shelf.
We're pretty sure that Stevie Wonder's even more blind brother cut the speaker holes in the parcel shelf. There's no other reasonable explanation for the massive mess they've made of it. Time for a quick manual test run. Yep, that looks okay. Let's see if it works electronically. Excellent. A very satisfactory sounding thunk.
And it should work something like this.
Nick is entirely too pleased with his new two-way switch. It's just a little creepy if I'm honest. So, here's another elegant solution to a problem that didn't exist until Nick created it. It's got to be time to get on with the front end now, surely.
Yes, now we can think about the front.
So, after the great Shropshire biscuit odyssey, it's time to move on to the front end. And the plan is to replace this pile of junk here with this pile of expensive new stuff here. We're going to build it up piece by piece and clamp it all into place. First up is the new front panel. This is bolted onto the jig in exactly the same place as the original panel. Here's the new scuttle, held on using Cleco clamps. Here's the near side wing. You can see how tight it is to the top of the strut tower. Now the offside wing, and it's beginning to resemble a car again now. And finally the two A panels. Hold on, we're missing something here. Yes, the bonnet. Where's the bloody bonnet? What the hell are you doing to the bonnet, Blackhurst? There's nothing wrong with it. Oh well, I'm sure he has a perfectly reasonable explanation. Okay, now that the front end is all clamped up, let's have a quick look at the panel gaps. No. Right. Terrible. Well then. Nope. Rubbish. Awful.
I mean, I have seen worse, honestly. But there's no denying that at the moment this front end fits like a prick in a sock. Still, with a few hours careful fettling with a hammer, I'm sure it can look like a piece of crap.
The reason that the panel fit was so god-awful was that the original car had a little accident. Little enough for the entire front end to be pushed up 10mm. Once we'd figured this out and modified the front panel jig to suit, all the panels came back into line pretty bloody well. And that took only an entire day to sort out. So now we've got all the panels aligned with one another. The problem is we've got absolutely nothing at all to attach them to. We've got no inner wings for the wings to attach to. We've got no subframe for the front panel to attach to. And we've got no A-panel return for the A-panel to weld to. This is not an oversight. It's all part of the plan. Due to the complexity of the stuff going on under the bonnet, it is desirable to have a removable front end.
Ordinarily, removable fronts on Minis take one of two forms. Either a forward hinging flip front or a set of removable panels. But for my car, I want to use the best of both worlds, possibly with a twist. So, what we need is a brief. Down at the front here, I need a hinge like a flip front, but I also want to be able to remove the front without having to undo any bolts. For routine checks, I want to be able to open and close the bonnet conventionally. This is a problem because on most steel removable fronts, the bonnet's welded closed to keep the wings in the right place. We're going to have to find another way to do that. Also, I don't want to leave the bonnet on the car when we take the front end off. If we haven't got enough to think about already, we come to this area here. Now, nearly all removable fronts split from this upper A-panel seam here because it's a really good place to do it. The problem we've got is, at some point, we're going to be putting wheel arch extensions on this wing. And if we split the front end off here, we're going to have to split the arch extension as well. And I don't want to do that. So what we need to do is find some way of taking the arch extension of the wing and the A-panel with the front end when we remove it.
So let me get this straight. We've got to design and build a flip front frame to hang the panels off, let the bonnet come with it but open independently, and not split it at the forward A-panel seam. And all this has to be MacGyvered up using nothing more complicated than some tube, bar, nylon, steel sheet, hand tools, a welder, a lathe, and a small 4-axis CNC milling machine. Cripes.
So the plan is to make a forward hinging frame out of this 20mm thin wall tubing to hang all the panels off. It might be brilliant, it might be bollocks. There's only one way to find out. The first part of the framework to go in is this curved member here. Follows the line of the scuttle panel. It's as far back in the engine bay as we can get it so it's out of the way. Its main job is to keep these two wings the right distance apart. And at the moment it's tacked to the inner wings we've got just so we've got something to build to.
This transverse bar follows both curves across the scuttle panel and took us around 2 hours of fettling to finish.
The next thing we need is a bit of tube to come off the top of this one and run forwards to give us something to attach the top of this wing to.
There's not a lot of room under there, and these wing supports are critical to the panel fit.
I've had to do this bit in 3 sections because we've had to follow the curve of the wing, come around the headlight bowl and then make sure this down tube's on the outside of the radiator. This just disappears down to the bottom at the moment, we'll worry about that later.
With the front wing supports tacked in, the frame is beginning to take shape.
I'm not going to weld the wing directly to this metal tube, it's going to weld to this. Fits up in here like this, and this takes the place of what would normally be the wing mounting band on the inner wing.
As you can see, it's vitally important to use as many clamps as humanly possible when tacking the mounting bands in. Now they're on, time for a quick fit check. Lovely.
I'll finish this front piece when the wings are welded on in their final position. And when that's done, I can fold this lip up and trim it back, and that'll give us our water channel. Now we need to find a way to fix the A-panel.
It's going to be fiendishly complicated and over-engineered, isn't it?
What I've come up with is this.
Well, that doesn't look too complicated. I must be missing something. He never passes up an opportunity to overcomplicate something.
We've now got somewhere to attach the A-panel to. I've put a bit of tube for the frame down the front of it to stiffen it up. Now we need a way of stopping this whole thing flapping about. So I've turned up this little fella to go in the end of the tube, and that's going to seat in this rubber grommet which fits to the A-post.
I knew it wouldn't be that simple. The nylon peg fits in the end of the tube like this, and when the flip front is closed, it locates inside the rubber grommet to stop any rattling about. Alright, that's actually quite neat.
To attach this bracket and have some adjustability, I need to drill through the A-post so I can bolt it through to this nut plate. Luckily, someone left the bottom of the A-post open, so it's not an issue.
A happy coincidence.
It's almost like someone thought about this months ago.
Engage smug mode. Alright, quit your gloating and get on with fitting the captive nut plate. After marking out where the plate will fit and drilling the clearance holes for the bolts, the plate gets screwed on to locate it and then welded into place on the inside of the A-post. There's the finished bracket firmly attached to the chassis of the car.
What I'd like to do now is take a piece of tube, come off this mainstay here and pick up the tube on the A-panel. I can't do it because there's not enough room under the wing without notching this piece of structure here. So instead, I've got this fella, I'm going to go round the strut tower, something like that, and then brace it with a piece of flat plate that we have got space for.
The two brace bars are now tacked into place. So, along with the new bottom location points, the wings and A-panel shouldn't move around too much now.
I've got this brace piece cut and ready to go in there like that, but there's a catch. Here it is. It's going to live up here, so it needs to go in before this does.
Good grief.
What?
He's been waiting all series to get that gag in. Anyway, here's two of the smallest catches we could find. Off a Jaguar X-Type, believe it or not. They're going to need a holder bracket to sit in, so it's CAD time. Cut out the steel, fold it up, weld the edges, drill some holes, linish back, and you end up with a shiny new catch holder. Terrific. Here's another captive plate to mount the catch holder to. And here it is welded to the car. Now we'll just fix the catch holder on, then add a piece of tube to mount the clip to. And lastly, time to tack the clip on. Excellent. Both latches are now in place on the car, so we can tack the brace piece on to give the corner some more rigidity.
The next thing to sort out is the bonnet hinges, and for that I've liberated these off the back of a Porsche Boxster. Now they'll do the job, but unfortunately to make them fit I've had to notch out the main tube on the frame.
It's not very pretty at the moment, but we'll come back and beautify it all later on. The hinges are going to need some brackets to attach to, and naturally we've made them with captive nuts to aid assembly. They get tacked on like everything else at the moment. We're not welding properly yet until we know the whole thing will work. Let's bolt them on and have a look at some hinge action. I said hinge, with an H.
They'll work, but obviously not with the standard brackets on the bonnet, so they've had to go. And I've replaced them with a couple of captive nut plates to suit these. The next challenge is to sort the hinge for the flip front. Now this needs to fulfill the brief. It needs to be as far forward as possible for clearance when it's up, and to stop it taking the paint off the doors when you open it, the hinge has got to be in line or lower than the sill seam.
To make sure that the A-panel doesn't clout the door as the front rotates on the hinge, the pivot point has to be lower than the bottom of the door, so as it rotates, the A-panel is always moving away from the door.
That's all we know at the moment. Hopefully I'll see you with a solution after this transition. As you can probably imagine, we've kicked around a few fairly crazy ideas. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best solutions. At the end of the day, it's just a hinge. It doesn't need to be that complicated. So all it's going to consist of is this and a pair of these. And a pair of those. Two of them. A couple of these. And a pair of those. And these. And two of them. Couple of these and this and these.
This is what all that little lot looks like in an exploded diagram style. I warned you lot earlier about massively complicated stuff.
First part of putting this hinge together is welding these slotted ends in this tube. One either end, and they need to be perfectly in line, so I've made up a jig to make sure they are.
Of course you have. There's always time for a quick jig, especially when it's for something as critical as this. Now to give it some welly with the welder.
Next I've got to weld the bearing housing to the bearing housing holder and make sure they're the same both sides.
Once they've cooled down, we can fit the nylon bushes. This is how the hinge looks in the open position. When the slots are lined up, it allows the male bit, which is attached to the framework, to slide out of the hinge. When it's closed, the inner part rotates through about 90 degrees and cannot come out of the slot. It's clever, isn't it? Right, let's get this hinge assembly on the car. Most importantly, better check it's level and true. Make the noise. Okay, let's get the front panel off and have a look at this monster we've created. The hinge assembly is located in such a position as to be hidden behind the front number plate. Nothing is left to chance, you know.
What should happen now when I cut through these tack welds is nothing.
Right, now it's time to take a look and see if all this work has actually counted for something. Fingers crossed. Let's see that one more time. Brilliant. After clamping the panels back on, we've added some gas struts to the bonnet. Wonder if they'll work.
Sticks or so last season.
So there we have it. A new flip front to hang the new panels off. It'll take a while to permanently fix the panels to the frame, so we'll leave it there for this episode while we crack on with that tedious job. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode from the files of Project Binky.